What the fuck is going on right now? That's the next piece to this. What the fuck is going on right now? I want to just jump right in because seriously, we have the eclipse season started. You guys have talked about this. Now we're talking about the last 2 weeks especially, but this last week, the eclipses, then we've got like these massive earthquakes in California. Down here where I'm in the Mediterranean, we have Etna and Stromboli have both just completely blown their tops this week. On the physical level, we're seeing, and I'll get into this in a little bit, like the physical symptoms that have just been bizarre physical symptoms that, again, across the board, like it's doesn't matter what age you are or where you live, or people are getting these random symptoms. So, girls, help me. What the fuck?
It has been the talk of every single astrology show, astrologer, enthusiast for the last 12 months is this upcoming conjunction in January next year. And it's kind of is a culmination of a much larger cycle, and there's so many pieces to it, but essentially we've just come through summer solstice. And I was talking to you about kind of declination. So not only do the planets go around the sun on their path, I
want you to explain that a little, because that's interesting.
They're kind of, okay, the Earth's on a tilt by 23.5 degrees, and we've got the Tropic of Cancer, which is in the northern hemisphere. So basically at the height of summer, at the summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, the sun pretty much sits on a higher latitude, a celestial latitude. If you extrapolate outwards and up, the sun, Mercury, Venus, all the inner planets are up here. And then we've got Saturn and Pluto sitting at the Tropic of Capricorn, which is in the southern latitude, and Pluto is heading south past the south node. So it's sitting on the node right now and it's going south. So when Pluto was discovered in 1930, it was coming up above from below the Earth where it could be seen for the first time. Now it's heading back down below the Earth. So we've got Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter at the very bottom of the Earth. And we've got all the inner planets at the top of the Earth going in orbit. So we've got this like magnetic kind of pull happening as well. So even though Jupiter and Saturn conjunct every 20 years, the zodiac represents longitude. It's east to west, whereas declination is top to bottom, north to south. And we've got a whole bunch of stuff at the top and a whole bunch of stuff at the bottom in what they call contraparallel. So they're at the opposite latitude. So we've got that happening too, and it creates a pull.
Just to add to that, Jules, the stuff that's on the bottom, it's all in retrograde. So it's not only on the bottom, contraparallel, it's super close to us. So it's pulling really strongly.
And now, how many planets are in retrograde right now? You guys, 7?
4.
There's 4, but there'll be 6. Really.
Mercury tomorrow, Chiron the next day. So we'll be at 6 by Monday.
6 in retrograde, all at the same time, including Mercury. Oh, yay.
Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Pluto, Chiron.
Okay, so
But a lot of them are in their home sign, so they're super strong where they're sitting as well.
well, that's what I was going to say. So we saw starting around, I think it was the 29th of June, we started seeing these bizarre geomagnetic stuff happening, where the magnetopause was literally, and it's still going on. It's still going on. I haven't had a chance to look at it today, but right up until midnight last night, we're getting these, it's compaction and hit after hit after hit. And the reactions of the magnetopause, are showing something is interacting there that is unlike anything we've seen before. So when you talk about these magnetic connections, if we're talking about all these planets in retrograde, all these major planets in the south latitudes, right? And you were just saying, and in their own houses, like in their planetary houses, like is that the connection that's just opening us up, as in the planet, opening up the planet, that is just massively affecting us? It's a big question.
Yeah, I think it's got something to do with it for sure. But there are so many asteroids, and we've got planetoids, and we're not just looking at the major planets. You've got all the moons of Saturn and Jupiter as well. So Jupiter's got like 68, over 70 moons itself, and its magnetic pull is like 20 times that of Earth. And You've basically got all these heavy hitters at the southern latitudes pulling from the south, and all the sort of inner planets at the north. So it's really hard to say, like, and then unless you're out there looking, because you're just relying on the information from the internet, which can be really unreliable at this point in time. But I suspect they definitely use this celestial latitude, this declination. It's not even in my ephemeris. Like, you've got to look at other sources to get it online. But there are some places like moon tracks which actually have the celestial latitude of the planets, like up and down the ecliptic, and every time they pass the apparent path of the Earth around the sun, it kind of leaves an electric magnetic kind of trail. And this is when the moon and the sun intersect. This is what we call the nodal points, or the lunar nodal points. But every single planet has its own planetary nodal point too, where they cross the apparent path of the sun from the perspective of their planet. So not only do we have Saturn and Pluto sitting on the lunar south node, which is that electric kind of rope where the moon and the sun intersect, they're actually already sitting on their own planetary node where they cross that electric rope themselves. So it's kind of like this extra oomph of energy, which we haven't seen before in 24,000 years, 26,000 years possibly. So,
okay, and that brings in the big question, because then we've got, like, we're talking our little solar system, which is like here, but then we've got the stuff that we do struggle with to get accurate information of, like, galactically. So right now we're purportedly crossing the ecliptic, the galactic plane, and we're in this heavy photon belt. Apparently, we have all of these pieces of information, and if we talk about the electric and magnetic connections as we're crossing through these things, we're seeing so much going on. But how do we, when we're inside this little teeny place, trying to look outwards, trying to see all the greater connections, like the even more magnetic electrical connections, is there a place where we can get more information, if you will?
Basically, astrologically, every time like a new planetoid or something is discovered, they measure its kind of effect for a very long time. So we haven't actually gone through a full cycle of Pluto. So that orbit's 248 years, was discovered in 1930. But in the astrological community, astronomical community, they have a look at the time it was discovered. They have a look at the time where it's closest to the sun, or the perihelion, or closest to the Earth and the sun, for the effects. And they document it, and they statistically test it over and over and over and over and over again. So yes, you just have to look at the elliptical path of Pluto, which is highly elliptical and unusual of the outer planets. I wouldn't be surprised. There's more out there, absolutely. But generally speaking, like the stuff that we can see and the heavy hitters and the big planets like Jupiter and Saturn, they're pulling. They're pulling.
Well, and it's interesting because the physical symptom stuff, well, I want to get back to this, not just the planetary. So we've talked about geomagnetic bizarreness that we can see, the magnetopause, warping, distorting, getting crunched. We can see things, for example, like the earthquakes, the volcanoes, sinkholes. We're seeing these massive floods. We're seeing hail. And now it's like common. It's like no one's showing pictures of hail this big anymore. Every picture of hail that you see is the size of an orange to a grapefruit, if not a small melon. I saw some just out of Mexico 2 weeks ago. And the guy was holding up one. I was like, I just bought a melon today that was about that size. These are unusual. We don't see the shape of the hail. That was one of the big ones that we talked about in 2015 when we started seeing hailstorms, and the hail was coming in and it no longer had the quintessentially ball. You were getting hail that had like bizarre spikes off of it, etc. It's not falling. It's not forming the way we used to see it physically on us. We're seeing an array of symptoms, and Anne and I talk like continuously. I mean, like it's like weekly we have discussions where we pull out all the symptoms from the Unfuckers group, and with the homeopathic groups, etc. And we're looking at these and we're seeing broad spectrum symptoms across the board. Like I said, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what area of the world you're living in. And it speaks to me that we have to be looking at an electrical magnetic causality, if you will. We have these cosmic rays coming in right now that we know the cosmic rays are off the freaking charts. No one in the official agencies really want to talk about it, but we have enough studies coming out by independent scientists proving that we have ultraviolet light coming in, UVA, UVB, UVC, massive amounts. We have these cosmic rays, my foofy dog, photons, the most highly charged photons they've ever seen, 100 TeV. That's insane when you remember that CERN was firing off at 13 TeV and freaking the scientific community out. The physical effects. These physical effects, these cannot be coincidental, in my opinion.
No, not at all. It just feels like you're being pulled from every direction. Like I've had so many skin eruptions. Like Pluto is an eruption, an erupting kind of thing, and Saturn is the skin, teeth, bones, and hair. It's your form and structure as well.
Oh, really?
And those go together. And I've had so many skin eruptions, and my bones ache. And Jupiter, Jupiter in a health sense kind of represents the hips. So my hips are out of whack, like hips, thighs, sciatic kind of nerve. But those three together I found really interesting, and I was thinking about it today. And Saturn is really drying. It's a real cold, dry energy, and I just can't get hydrated enough. I just want to immerse myself in something that's going to hydrate me because I cannot get enough water.
I just bought a 2-kilo bag of Epsom salts, and I've been joking that as soon as I have some time today, I'm going to put a cup of it in a cold bath, or just like a body temperature bath, and just submerge myself in Dead Sea salts and Epsom salts as a oh my God, I just need to hydrate. You've just mentioned, you've just touched on with each of those planets and skin eruptions,
Totally, Danny. That's a range of symptoms that we've been seeing in a nutshell, Jules. That's such interesting information. So when you say, I haven't looked into the connections between the planets and physical symptoms, and where, how these connections are made in astrology. How, just as a matter of interest, how do you figure out the connections?
Well, back when astrology was combined with astrology and geometry, it was also part of medicine.
The good old days.
The good old days
when things were not separated and kept divided.
Yeah. There's a really good syncretism wheel that Megan got me onto recently by Santos Bonacci before he went all crazy. But it actually shows the parts of the body that represent the zodiac. So starting from the head is Aries through to Pisces, meaning the feet, and also parts of the head and the face and the ear, and particular valves, heart valves and things like that relate to different planets.
Interesting.
So, and we've also got Uranus in Taurus. So Uranus is electric, chaotic, unexpected. It's lightning, electricity, and it's hitting Taurus, which is the first earth element. It's our tactile, sensory perception. And yeah, a physical body, essentially. Yeah, Megan's just put up the...
Megan, make sure you send that to me right after the show so I can put this into
kind of wheel
article.
Yeah, so these planets represent... So when these planets are also making connections either longitudinally by the signs or by declination, it can probably trigger parts of the body and how we're feeling it. But definitely Uranus in Taurus being lightning striking the head and coming through the body, we're finding it really, really hard to ground.
Yes.
I found I've been watching for patterns, and I noticed when the moon is in Virgo, which is considered a house of routine, health, diet, things like that. When the moon is in, people seem to complain more about health, and it being right opposite transiting Neptune in Pisces, I think there's an extra pull there, plus squaring Jupiter in Sagittarius. So whenever currently we see the moon moving through Virgo, which is happening once a month, there's a huge spike going up in people complaining about tiredness, fatigue, no energy, sleeping patterns are going off, and their routine is going out. Right now, Sun is in Cancer, and so many people, and in 3 days it will oppose Saturn in Capricorn. So we're 3 days away from a big opposition. Already, I've noticed that in the past 2 days, people are coming down with food poisoning. And Cancer is the stomach. And so I noticed that when the planets do aspect in certain signs to certain other planets, we are getting typical symptoms of those planets. And because we have the UU room, I can see people complaining about certain things on a daily basis, and they're going through different waves of different symptoms. So although we have like a general problem that we know is happening, we can see on a day-to-day basis, and I'm always looking at the transits, what's going on, why there's so many people with this sudden complaint. And you can see, like, every time the moon is in Virgo right now, people are complaining that they have no sleep, they have problems with their routine, things go, like, that seems to be an amping time for the magnetosphere to go funny as well. And that's the health stuff. But regarding the planetary stuff that's going on, regarding planet Earth and earthquakes and volcanoes, I tend to look at the mundane chart of the country. So that's the way I do it. I look at the country's birth chart. So, for example, the US, has 4th of July as its birth date, 1776, right? So that we know the sun is in Cancer, and we know that Pluto is in Capricorn, and we can see all the other planets as well. So when we look at the US chart, whenever there's eclipse season coming, which we're in the middle of right now, when the eclipses are very, very close to the US sun and the US North Node, which is also in Cancer, and the US Saturn in Pluto, the US Pluto, sorry, the North Node, no, the Sun and Pluto in opposite signs, and we've got eclipses in these opposite signs, we can expect something Plutonian to happen, which is something that people haven't looked at. So I noticed that, okay, they're always playing down the earthquakes. They're always knocking down the Richter scale of an earthquake when it is in the US. The magnitude, yeah. They're always putting it down, but in other places they don't put it down so much. It's like they don't want to cause alarm. And when people are talking about, oh, Yellowstone might erupt, there's always a seismologist coming out and say, no, don't be silly, that's just scaremongering. But people are like, they have legitimate concerns, but something is always downplaying it. So it's moved to the side. It's never in the news. So the typical thing with Pluto is whatever you ignore comes to the surface.
Huh.
So we've been ignoring seismic activity in the US, and there are eclipses with a Pluto return, a solar return happening at the same time. You can be sure that whatever the US as a country is ignoring, you can see it in the mundane chart, will explode, will come out, will make itself known. And I look at the chart of Italy as well. So although Sicily seems to be sort of like an annex part of Italy.
They don't really consider themselves Italian, but yes.
But we still look at the Italian chart, and the Italian chart is very fiery with Pluto and Mars in fiery sign of Leo. You can tell that's the way that people express themselves and the way that they come across, especially to foreign countries, because that's in their 9th house. And we see that there's afflictions going on with the cardinal signs as well. So they have a lot of planets in cardinal signs, especially Cancer and Libra. So when we have cardinal sign activity in the planetary transits that are happening right now, we can see that Italy is affected. It's definitely affected.
Yeah, it's rocking.
Jupiter, Chiron, Neptune in Libra. So the eclipse was squaring their planets, which was in the 11th house. So that kind of like that affects their society. And although, what is it? One person's died, right, from Stromboli.
Yeah, one person was climbing to the summit of Stromboli, and it's not a very high one. Like it's a very low volcano, but someone was climbing and they were killed during the eruption.
Yeah, so it's the kind of eruption that makes news. So they've got Etna and they've got Stromboli, and they're both being set off into motion right now. Uranus and
earthquakes around. There's been several earthquakes now all around Sicily, to the north, to the Italian side, if you will, of Sicily. The Italian side of Sicily.
Well, you've got Uranus transiting the 6th house of Italy, and 6th house represents the stomach. So if you think of the stomach of Italy is getting affected by the Uranus transit right now, then you could say, it's
throwing up,
vomiting. Yeah, it's vomiting.
It's being a little.
So I look at political charts, the mundane charts, because it tells me something like astrological. But whether or not I can understand it from the magnetosphere, I'm not that smart. I can't see what's incoming, and I can't see things that are behind the sun that I don't know about.
Yeah.
But it always seems to be, instead of from the night side, it seems to be affecting the day side of Earth. So there's something, you know, wherever the sun is, and right now the sun is in Cancer, so something is pulling in from Cancer, from that part of the solar system. What, I don't know. I really can't tell, and I'm finding it as fascinating as you are, because I can't answer it.
That's why I love these discussions, because we pull little pieces, get thrown on the table, and you go, like the bit about what Jules was saying about the planets, and like this planet that's the hips, and Ann and I both on our faces at the exact same time went, oh, get a little more comprehension here when we bring these little pieces forward.
Yeah, for other people, it's going to be the feet as well, because there's a connection between Sagittarius and Pisces, with their traditional ruler being Jupiter, both of them. So there's also
that's funny.
Feet and the hips.
That's so funny, because I broke my foot last summer. I didn't go to the hospital or doctor. Why the fuck would I do such a thing? It's been fine for months and months and months. The last 2 weeks, my foot has been aching in the break point, and I'm like, I haven't done anything. I haven't re-injured it in any way. It's just all of a sudden that one spot is now really sore.
Well, Saturn's
Jupiter
been on the
in
south
Sagittarius. Sorry, Megan.
I was just going to say, with you go first.
I'll be quick. We got Jupiter retrograding in Sagittarius, and we've got Neptune retrograding in Pisces. We've got hips expansion problems, and we've got feet numbing problems. Those two planets in those two signs, we can see this. People are feeling like, okay, what is Neptune? Neptune represents Pisces, which is water. We feel the swelling in our ankles, in our feet. We feel numbness in our feet. Our feet are aching. As soon as we've got Neptune retrograding, it seems to worsen. And the same with Sagittarius. We're like our hips. I don't know about everybody else, but I don't see anyone losing inches on their hips right now. If anything, gaining inches on their hips and putting their hips out of alignment.
Yes.
And these two are affecting each other by a 90-degree angle, so they seem related. We might all need to see a chiropractor soon because it's all gone off.
Absolutely, and Saturn again. So generally, Saturn and Pluto do a little bit of a dance, and Saturn is on the South Lunar Node. It just made a connection. I think it was last week around the 24th, and that was the second out of 3. So, or even a little bit more than that. It's usually 3 to 5 connections they make. So we had a bit of a ramp up in geomag activity from the 24th, I believe.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say too, because with Saturn on the South Node, Saturn was known to the ancients as the greater malefic. So when you have Saturn on the South Node, because the South Node makes things very physically kind of manifested within our bodies and like around us in this reality, you start having more of like the lower vibrations of certain planets coming out, or like the issues with the bodies instead of the positive aspects. So that's why, as you were saying, like in the last 2 weeks, all of a sudden it picked up, Danny. It's because Saturn was moving close to the South Node, and now they're conjunct. And Amina had said about how in 3 days the sun is going to be opposite Saturn. I think it's very important to note, and I've been watching for this day, because not only is the sun going to be opposite Saturn, the sun will be exact with the North Node, and Saturn is exact with the South Node. 3 days from now, it's a day to watch.
So what date's that? Hold on.
I think it's Tuesday.
The 9th?
Yeah, I think it's the 9th.
The 9th? So can you prognosticate? Can you like what kind of things could we see come from that kind of a connection?
Astrologers have unapologetically called it the meat grinder for very good reason. So anyone who has strong Aries, Libra, Cancer, Capricorn
Oh, fuck.
Are going through a lot of changes. Also with Mercury ruling sort of Gemini, the lungs, being in Cancer for so long, we've had people with chest infections and coughs and colds and digestive issues being Virgo. That's gone into Leo just briefly, but it's about to go retrograde back into Cancer. So it could have some repercussions of or reignition of kind of flu chest issues as well.
So flu chest, stomach, skin, bones, teeth. What can you make out of that?
The meat grinder.
The meat grinder.
The whole body, essentially. What I'm thinking, guys, is what we can do prophylactically, because this information is fascinating. So if you know that this is coming in and your entire body is likely, it sounds like the entire system is going to be stressed. So what can we do? We need to take time out. You see, this organized energy system of ours will rebalance if it's given the energy. So it's really important to pull back from anything that is extending your energy too much. We've got to just come right back to the Taurian place of home, I guess. You know, just focus, center, really listen to yourself. Go to your blanket for it for 3 days if that's what you need to do. Yeah. Because if we can do that, then the body will have time to adjust to this energetic change without getting physically sick. You see, symptoms, physical symptoms, are simply an expression of the body trying to regain balance. That's all they are. So when our energy, the first thing that happens with these changes is that our energetic body becomes diseased. We even have it in our language, diseased. It's ill at ease when these changes are happening. So the first thing that happens, if we catch that dis-ease straight away, it does not need to somatize into physical symptoms.
You're right. It is about stress, because when people are highly stressed, stomach issues, nerve issues, skin issues, and aching issues are ultimate symptoms. With the moon in Virgo opposite Neptune in Pisces, there's depression, lack of sleep. So if we can just nurture ourselves for the next few days with adequate sleep and rest, try not to let things get you stressed out. It may just be passing. Learn to roll with it, but also give yourself a break, because physically it's quite a toll.
Yeah, definitely. With Pluto in Capricorn, and the polarity point, it's about finding emotional stability within oneself, regardless of what's going on the outside. So whether that be forest bathing, getting outside of the four walls.
Yep.
That most people stay in a lot, and thoughts of things. So it's finding that emotional kind of stability within yourself. And
so one of the things I want to talk about, and because I've now repeated myself in so many emails and private messages on so many different groups, etc., like we've talked about skin eruptions as being a major one. Major skin eruptions like abscesses, boils, carbuncles, staph infections. I don't know how many in the last 2 weeks, how many times I've typed out my method for dealing with it. I've lost track, literally, over 20.
These are all heaty. Those are all heaty symptoms.
Hot.
And I think they're very hot. And I think if we take the remedy of turmeric, you can, even if you don't want to eat turmeric, you just put it in water and spray it around the house. Tulsi is also good for the inflammations and the swollen joints and ankles and things like that. Tulsi, cucumber, diuretics.
Yep.
And I think I think I'd totally recommend for the stress rescue remedy, buck flower
Yeah.
rescue remedy, because you just need something at hand. Lavender as well for reducing tension and any like these things are hot. We want cooling, so lavender is very cooling.
Yep. Mint,
things like that.
but mint tea. Do not
Yes.
put mint essential oil on your body. You'll burn yourself. I know it's one of those bizarre conundrums. Don't do it.
And jasmine tea is very good for the nerves.
Yes. Yep. But one of the things I've told everyone, literally in the last week, is that everyone needs to go and buy themselves an organic cabbage. Everyone should just go out tomorrow, go out today, go out right now, go buy an organic cabbage, because basically within the skin eruptions, and you make a poultice of a piece of the cabbage leaf and just crush it down a little bit and put it over the infections to draw it out. Between the skin eruptions, between the inflammation on the joints, which again, putting an entire cabbage leaf around a shoulder, a knee, an ankle to help you deal with the inflammation, and the water and salt. Going right back, and so funny to what you were saying about the whole thing of salt, sea salt, and hot water poultices. Literally get soaking it out, lots and lots of sea salt, whether it's abscesses in the mouth, using the sea salt rinses, and I mean lots. And this is my number one at the moment, and I've been treating so many people for the last 3-4 weeks. It's the number one go-to right now. That's what I just said to everyone. I said, I'm going to put a post out today. Say, everyone, go buy a cabbage. Make sure you have like a pound of sea salt in your house. And maybe that's like the hunker down. Be prepared. Be prepared. We talk about being prepared in our bug out kits. This is the bug in kit: cabbage, sea salt, some turmeric, some some cucumbers, some peppermint, and some lavender. There's your bug in kit for the next little while, anyway. Oh, the insanity.
Speaking of salt, I have a quick question for Anne. So we were talking about the meat grinder that's happening in 3 days. So we're going to have the exact opposition of the moon in Cancer, the sun in Cancer with the north node, and Saturn with the south node in Capricorn. We're going to have the moon over here in Libra. So it's going to make an aspect called a T-square, which is an opposition, and 2 squares, and it's nasty. So when you have a T-square, the release point is the opposite point of like the apex. So we go over into Aries. So the cell salt for Aries is, what is it, Caliphos, I think it is? Let me just double check that. Yeah, calcium, potassium phosphate. So I'm wondering what Anne thinks about that during this particular time, if she's seeing it come up relevant recently, or.
Yeah, there's lots of reasons. That's a good question. The sort of homeopathy I do doesn't rely on cell salts. Cell salts in a way are like micronutrients. So it's not quite the same as what I am. That's one of the reasons I don't teach the cell salt thing, because it's not something I'm that well versed in, although I'm familiar. Caliphos, potassium phosphate, is a great nerve remedy. It's a great nerve tonic. It's used in classical homeopathy for exhaustion, prostration. So yeah, there's lots of reasons why it would be a good thing to take. However, and I'll always come back, and Danny does too, to individual intuition around these processes and what to take. If you feel drawn to do that, absolutely go for it, but just tune into. I think that it goes back to Dawn was saying something about listening to the body. We really do need to tune into ourselves to find out what's the best way for my body to get through this right now. If any of you feel drawn to particular cell salts that you don't have on hand, it is possible to make a paper remedy that will get you through in the short term. Although, as I say, the cell salts are micronutrients. They're not actually the same as a home remedy in the classical sense. But you can take a potency of Caliphos. You can write Caliphos on paper. You can program water to pick up that information, and then you can give it to yourself during the acute. For instance, if you're so wiped out that you can't go to the shops, you can't find the stuff, you can make any thing that you need in emergency by programming water to pick up that pattern. So, yeah, it's possible. To get back to your question, yep, it's absolutely possible that could fit. But there are, other things too. So just tune into yourself.
And that even goes to our diet too. Like, you know what I mean? Tune into yourself. Maybe you're going to have massive chocolate cravings. Okay. Maybe it's going to be all I want. Literally for the last 2 days, I've eaten nothing but fresh fruit. Nectarines, cherries, plums, peaches, even for fruits, vegetables, things like you said, cucumber amino, which you made me laugh. I've eaten 2 cucumbers in the last 2 days. All of these things, feed your body what it's craving. These are for me, most importantly, of what we can do for ourselves is feed ourselves what we crave. And Haagen-Dazs is not necessarily a craving that I'm talking about. But, listen to yourself on that one. Teas, drinks, whether you want cold, things like the temperature of water is really important. I personally, I don't drink cold water. I don't drink cold water. And I had a friend who was a naturopath 20 years ago, told me that drinking cold water does shocking things to your digestive system. And I've only ever drank room temperature water. This week, I put water in the fridge. Why? Because I was craving, literally, and it wasn't about being hot. It wasn't about heat. It was about I was craving cold water. And then all of a sudden, literally, I don't know, about yesterday, maybe yesterday morning, I made myself a cup of hot water. Why? I don't know. No clue. Didn't even make tea. Literally just boiled the kettle and then sat there and sipped some hot water. These are the cravings that we have. Eat temperature also is one of those pieces that changes how we bring in that energy, bring it into our system. So you may want a cold shower, you may want a hot shower, you may want a lukewarm shower. So yeah, be very, very aware of what you're craving. And if you can at all possible, rest when you're tired, rest. If you can't, take a nap. If I know it's hard if you're working a 9-to-5 job and you want to crash out at 2, it kind of becomes difficult to deal with. But give yourself the opportunity to deal with it the best way you can in the moment. And like I said, I used to joke, I had a Swedish friend of mine teach me the trick of the cat nap. And he was a daytime trader. So getting a cat nap was virtually impossible for him. And he used to sit at his desk and he used to put a lighter in his hand. And he would just lean his head back and close his eyes and hold his hand, so his arm's off the arm of the chair, just holding the lighter. The moment he would start to drop into a sleep, which only takes really more than about 12 minutes for the average person, your hand relaxes, you drop the lighter, you hear it, and he wakes you back up again. And I have used that for 20 years. So even if you're at work, if you get a coffee break or something, if you can go sit down, something, like I said, like his thing was hold the lighter. That's what I've always gone with. Just hold the lighter. The moment you actually start to fall into a deeper sleep, you'll drop the lighter and it wakes you up, and then you're refreshed because you haven't gone into a deep sleep. All you've done is just rested. And sometimes all it takes is 10 minutes of rest. Just close your eyes and relax. Listen to your body. Yes, very much so.
Danny, I think you're giving excellent advice right now, because if you think about what I just said about the tension release point that's coming up in Aries, we also have the sun and the north node in Cancer, and the universe is always telling us to go where the north node is. That's where you lean into to get out of these heavy energies. So Aries is about the self, and Cancer is about self-care and nurturing. Anne had just said, be the best mother that you possibly can be to yourself. And that's exactly what you do to get through these crazy energies right now. Everything is set up saying, listen to yourself, you know the answer, and take care of yourself as only you can take care of yourself. And you just love yourself and self-care and nurture your way through it.
Yep. I agree. Well, that's it, darlings. Sorry, Jules, go ahead.
I was just about to say, we've also got Venus meeting the North Node and the sun in a few days, I think on the 12th of this month. So that will bring a nice calmer energy, or the ability to tap into that.
This nice calmer energy would be greatly appreciated right now.
Maybe not calmer, but the ability to tap into that self-love will be
Right.
available.
To let other people love you too. Like, people are going to be more driven to nurture and take care of each other instead of holding everybody at an arm's length. It's going to be kind of like gather everybody close and let's just like love each other through this.
Big
Absolutely.
hugs to everybody. Big hugs. We all need a hug right now. We all seriously need a hug right now. Okay, well, that's it, guys. That's it for this episode. And what did I say? July 20th? Saturday, July 20th? Was that the date? Saturday, July 20th, the Boomer Wave. We'll see if that one ends up getting renamed somewhere halfway through the show, too. That's it for us. I will talk to all you guys later. Ciao.